This week on the Rental Report Review. Believe Everything Except Your Eyes, Snake Eyes, 1998. He's wacky, he's sweet, he's the most, he's the end, he's dopey, he's fast, he's silly, he's the nuts. The Ladies' Man, 1961. Every Young Man Needs a Teacher, Homework, 1982. If You Think You're Safe, You're Dead Wrong, The Prowler, 1981. Godspeed, You Black Emperor follows a member of the biker gang and his interaction with his parents after he gets in trouble with the police. Godspeed, You Black Emperor, 1976. Here's the lead. This is incredible. And there was a time, maybe just 5 years ago, when I would have hated this movie.
Hi, Rick Santoro. Hello, Richard Santoro. Ricky! And I am the king!
I used to hate De Palma. Fucking hate, like nerd hate him. Even when I would allow myself to acknowledge a good De Palma film, it was always caveated. I never understood the camp, the gags, the diopters, the split screen, the cribbing. And then I saw Noah Baumbach and Jake Paltrow's essential documentary, De Palma, saw Body Double hot off its heels, and find myself an absolute apostle. Snake Eyes. I don't understand why even fans have caveated this one as a bit of a bastard child. I remember working at the AMC in high school when this came out. If anything, what's definitely stunted this one is that a certain element of this felt dated on its release. Hollywood was experiencing the young guard coming into its own. Heightened studio films are moving out into the real world. And De Palma is playing in a distinctly theatrical milieu. He's still in conversation with Hitchcock. Hitchcock still operating solely on the lot. Where this new generation is combining Hitchcock with Cassavetes, with Altman, with Ridley Scott, with Kubrick. I think maturing out of my own stupid bias, and with the simple benefit of temporal distance, and finding ourselves in a dearth of visual communication with a cinematic vocabulary, Megalopolis aside, Snake Eyes is a total breath of fresh air. And after watching this, I find myself thinking he and Lynch belong together in a lot more conversations. They come at it from different vectors, but both seem curious in framing dreams, consciousness, psychology through cinematic and generic iconography. I give Snake Eyes 1998 4 stars.
That radio was 5. 5 people make a conspiracy, right?
If anything, I wish De Palma had a bigger canvas for this. Cage is tuned and purring with satisfying explosive revs. He's a 64 250 GTO is what he is. And Carla Gugino is the glue of this entire thing. So much is built to support her, and unfortunately has literally nothing to do for long stretches. In short, I'm bummed they made her such a good character that I'm enraged she's not on the screen more. It's funny how frivolous films can become suddenly hyper-relevant. If anything, the theme of tonight is Megalopolis.
Hollywood's biggest, most elaborate, most expensive studio stage set of all time is constructed before your eyes.
I threw this on my list in earnest when Coppola name-checked it in a recent interview or two. I think it was Combini. Not only for being a hilarious and well-made movie, but because Coppola visited the set when he was a young man and saw Jerry Lewis directing with an early form of video assist. For those of you who don't know what that is, in the film days, the earliest you could ever practically see anything you shot, actually look at it, was often the following evening, or at best, if under a rush, that night after work. And for a performer self-director like Jerry Lewis, not only did he hone his screen persona, physical persona, in this delayed manner, he learned how to stage it alone and in concert with other performers and settings. Sure, he's broad, but it's finely tuned and timed, and he releases the most astonishing distortions strategically. He's like a jazz drummer hitting the snare. They can make that drum sing and snap when it needs to. You don't hit it as hard as you can all the time. I would say 60 or some odd years later, and even at home, this film is hilarious. I just wish it had really, and I hate to use 3-act structure, but I wish it had a real Act 2 and a real Act 3. More so that it spent a bit more time actually addressing Herbert's central problem at hand. I would argue, to actually engage in a relationship. But that didn't stop me from giving The Ladies' Man 1961 3.5 stars. Really, this needed to be a literal 80s sex comedy. Get some Fosse people in there. I bet to hell you could get one of those 80s brats to learn all the moves. Still have Jerry direct. Oh, yeah, so I don't really know anything about Jerry Lewis. I've seen mostly clips. I recently saw him in Scorsese's The King of Comedy and looked at it on this very same show.
At least you got a double that time. That's for two-bagger, Miss Bellins.
But mostly clips, or maybe like when I was single digits years old. This has made me eager to dive further into his most remarkable others. Something was clearly in the water in the early 1980s. Everyone was horny for everyone.
Meet Tommy.
There was a general fuck you still going on to the establishment, to authority, a sense of wanting to do things right, whatever that means to the me generation that was making these movies, obviously fulfilling their desires to meet their goals and expectations. Sometimes that means illegally breaking the sacred trust of privacy, and sometimes it means seeking elder tutelage to one day please the lover of your dreams in an infinite state of eternal ecstasy. These can be a mixed bag. Anyway, this one was fun. I went into this expecting something, well, higher budget with, lights, but what I found was a somewhat punky, independent, broad coup of a cast, known and unknown. Joan Collins, Mamma Mia. I was a kid when Dallas was on, but I have no memory of it outside of baby blue cowboy hats and shit. She's like trailblazing, not just for the nuanced and complicated sexual narrative and energy. A girlfriend's mother is still a mother, a proxy for your mother, though a sin sometimes accompanied with a pat on the back. It's her trusting a set of filmmakers with a lot more in line with the later likes of the Linklater, Corinne, Larry Clark set. It's more on the verge of fringe slackerism than hijinks. I give Homework 1982 3.25 stars. It has a lot of great elements, but doesn't quite know how to tie them all together.
It was 1945, the night of the graduation dance. The war overseas had just ended.
It's incredible the influence Eastern European New Wave cinema and its expats had on the late 70s and 80s cinema. The liberal use of practical lighting, gauzy highlights, flashed shadows. It was a somewhat romantic step laterally away from studio artifice, from heavy, visible, organized aesthetics. Now you could go out into the real world. And what's in the real world? Sex and death.
I was different. I couldn't help myself.
The Prowler.
I was not hoping for a forgotten gem. I was actually almost assured coming into this that it would broadly miss the mark. For surely, why have I not heard of this? And I've been gazing down this very lane. I am also dense, blind, and dumb, which makes this near miss at being a transcendent forgotten gem all the more frustrating. It certainly delivers on many levels, but many of the pieces it lays out are indeed so good that when threads fail to weave together, it's just that much more of a letdown.
Whenever the time was right, he'd come back.
It has a great vibe, asks great questions, almost asks great questions about teenage love and sexuality, has a great real location tension. See, that's actually where I think it fell apart a little for me. It deploys and ratchets tension marvelously, several times, but it also goes back to the well a few too many times. And its choice to stick with events happening over the course of one single night, well, it burnt that incessant tension out. And or forced illogical character plot moves to stick with the, I think, needless conceit. And as a result, I think we're robbed of a little pathos and believability. If it wanted to stick to one night, it needed to break a little of its own mold.
You wish you were dead.
I give The Prowler 1981 3.5 stars. This is clearly a post-Halloween The Shining movie. It steals some of the best aesthetic elements from both of those to great effect, sometimes a little too liberally for its own good.
Mark!
But it works. It trips in the cracks and fumbles the landing. but everything else around it is still pretty damn good, and I think ultimately delivers. The gore is top-notch. This was actually filed under the Tom Savini section at Videotech, and for very good reason. It could have used even more. It was quite effective. I would say see it for that if there were more of it, but here, I don't know what I would say to see it for. Other than if you're into slashers.
Just when you catch your breath, it starts all over again.
I don't know why I'm so ambivalent to every film in this genre despite loving the genre so much. Maybe it's because I suspect that there's so much headroom that is rarely totally exploited or engaged with. But that's unfair. But you know,
You may think you're safe,
I'm not wrong.
but you're dead wrong. The Prowler, coming soon.
I knew absolutely nothing about this before I picked it up. I saw the box in the Japanese cult section. How could you not notice the cover? Read the description. Oh, it's a documentary. Oh, it's incredibly ultra rare. It's embedded. It's from the 70s? Given that matrix, I don't know how I could have expected anything. Literally anything was possible in Japanese cinema at this time, but I did find myself expecting a gritty, obsessive subculture film and I found quite a bit of that, but mainly a tender, vulnerable Wiseman through Ozu with first wave Herzog, observation of masculine youth looking for purpose and meaning in a culture, a globe, a world that has proven itself to be bereft of virtue, or at least illiberal in its distribution of justice and its complicity in war, capitalism, social national conformity, and the greater hegemony it later collectivizes NATO. I mean, I'm putting just a bit of mustard on it, but even through the video haze, it's a cathartic play of long unmet gazes, a progress of slouches and explosive rages, conveying more about human longing than just about anything I can think of right now. Fall Guy. Well, Fall Guy had some great shit, also previously covered on Mental Report Review, but that was fiction, but do go see that. No sides are taken here, and it doesn't make excuses either. And it's fair. The documentarians are as transparent as possible with some really dope biker B-roll. I give Godspeed You Black Emperor 1976 3.5 stars. A high 3.5 stars. I wouldn't sit on that score. The picture quality was a ghostly lo-fi chic, but at times, unfortunately distancing. Even sometimes with barely legible faces, it's incredible what can still be read. I wish it went a little deeper, lingered a little longer, a little more of the fly on the wall, a little more of the city at night, hanging and cruising. Could never get enough of that shit. And in Japan, into my veins. A lot of crossover crew with Oshima and others, and it's no wonder given the grace and delicacy. Two of my favorite authors come out of this era, Murakami no Tomo. Ripples of this moment propagating through their work. So yeah, it's nice to see what that actually looked like, from all sides. This week, my weekly pick of the week is, even just 5 years ago, I never dreamed I would have said this, but you can't beat De Palma. You're never gonna beat De Palma. Snake Eyes. It's Snake Eyes. Read the cinema, not the verisimilitude. This week's bonus feature is, I am completely torn between The Ladies' Man and Godspeed You Black Emperor. Maybe by the time I record this I'll figure it out, but if I don't, it's Megalopolis. Whatever you end up feeling about it, there comes a time when you realize there are only so many masters active in your lifetime, and you better take time to catch them while you can. I saw it last week and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram and X to see what movies I'm renting next, and pretty much everything is on my letterbox. I am going to go watch some more movies. I hope you do too. Very well.